Hello, this is Sarah Sabin, transformational leadership and business coach here in my Leading in the Modern Way video interview series. And I am super excited to have with me here today Ritukar Vijay, who is founder and CEO at autonomy.io. Ritukar, welcome. And would you mind introducing yourself in your own words, please?
First of all, thanks, Sarah, for having me here. And just to tell brief about myself, I have been into robotics and autonomous vehicles since almost 16 years now. Worked on various facets of robotics, be it defense applications, warehousing applications, and just before starting autonomy, 3-4 years, I've been like purely vested in autonomous driving, autonomous vehicles. And it was pretty much that time when we realized that, hey, autonomous vehicles or cars will take some good amount of time to hit the mainstream. So how can we leverage, the advancements in this space to solve some near-term goals? And that's how we started Autonomy for Delivery.
Wow. So many questions because I find the topic of autonomous vehicles fascinating, not least because I am a terrible driver. So I'm very excited that one day a car might be able to drive me. But is that what we've got going on in your background there, autonomous vehicles?
So, we actually worked out sketched the entire white space analysis of the industry that where all autonomous technologies can be useful. So what we realized was that, if you look at the entire supply chain of material movement, last mile delivery is one of the most complicated and expensive area, right? And we also looked at warehousing spaces where these autonomous robots can be used for material movement. But on a deeper analysis, we figured out that that is overcrowded area, and last mile delivery, despite being very expensive and complicated, I mean, it's still underserved. That's why we thought that how can these robots autonomously navigate from point A to point B to deliver goods in a faster, efficient, and much more economical way.
Wow. Okay. So you've got some examples there in the background, and it looks like they're being used in what, airports and.
So I think at this point in time, as you can see, we have been doing both indoor and outdoor deliveries. And within that space, right now, operational in the US, we are also operating in Spain and Rome, also in Middle East. So the overall operational, premises around, these locations, but pretty much anything which is indoor and outdoor deliveries for a hyperlocal setting, that's something, where these robots are able to deliver food and beverage, retail, and also packages.
Wow. Okay. So onto the business element of this. Obviously, most people know that getting a tech startup off the ground is challenging. So what were the most significant challenges you faced in growing your business to its current stage, and how did you overcome some of those challenges?
No, that's a good question. When we started the company, we started in midst of a pandemic. So the challenge was right there. How do you do the regular stuff? Forget taking a startup to a position where you have products for the customer. So right from there, the team, the founding team, and the immediate team, we cultivated a DNA which was turning adversities into opportunities. And when everybody during the COVID was facing challenges to get their groceries, get items to them, it was pretty much that litmus test that number of companies who were providing similar offerings, they were not there yet. So obviously there was a gap which we identified, and which has the potential, and what we're seeing is an upsurge even post-COVID world. So that was number one challenge to make these initial robots or bring in the team together in a very hybrid way, where we have to put these robots out in the public. At the same time, we have to protect ourselves and our families. So I think a huge contribution went from from the team. We took risk, and I think it was highly rewarding.
And you know what? One of the things I heard in what you were saying is that you were one of the first to market. And, you know, I think that ideas are two a penny, right? Anyone can have an idea, but it's acting on that idea and getting it off the ground as quickly as possible. And, you know, again, if you can approach a pandemic in a positive way, a completely unexpected pandemic in a positive way, and really see the opportunity in that, when you come up in against roadblocks and challenges in the future, you're like, well, you know, done this before, we're used to it.
No, so I mean, we were fortunate enough, like we met the right customers at the very beginning, and we were the world's first to do autonomous deliveries at any airport. That was our first type of customer indoors.
Mm.
And if you look at it, aviation was one of the most affected industries because of pandemic, right?
Mm.
So they were looking at an alternate source of services, revenue, and safety to bring back people to fly, even when the pandemic was fading off. So they also saw the opportunity at the same time. Won't take the credit for ourselves, but they saw an opportunity, and Cincinnati International Airport and the innovation team actually worked in hand with us to get this technology into the mainstream. And that continued with our other customers for airports like Rome International Airport. So where they also invested in us as an investor, and now they have a multi-year contract of running these robots for delivering food and beverages within the airport terminal.
Mm.
But that sets the ground, because airports is kind of dynamic, at the same time structure environment. So it was a good starting point for us. But then post that, we started working. Right now we are doing hyperlocal deliveries in Spain, in a city called Zaragoza, which is very close to Madrid. And there we are working for a fleet partner called GoGo Networks. And also in the US, we are going working towards automating these deliveries for both hyper last mile and curbside deliveries in that space.
That's really interesting. And I'd love to know more, because I think it would really be of interest to the audience. How did you build the relationship and close these big contracts with, airports are obviously big organizations. So how did you manage to do that?
So I think one thing which happened during the course of COVID, the entire business development was kind of remote. So it made it more efficient, and time efficient, money efficient in terms of engaging with multiple customers at the same time. I can literally have 3-4 major meetings, customer meetings in the same day. Wherein before COVID, people expect you to meet in person and discuss the ideas and closures around that. So COVID helped us to do the business development remotely. I think that was one plus. But also from our side, the effort has been not to treat customers as paying customers, but to enable them and make them part of the team, because these are new technologies. So whenever we engage with a customer, we are pretty much a partner to them, and they are also a partner to us. And that's how beautiful solutions come out, because at the end of the day, the robots need to work for them and for the end customer. So treat your customers as partners, and not just the ones who is paying you money for the product. So that helped us tremendously, and I think a lot of startups can gain with that insight.
I think that I love the way you phrased it as partnering with the customer. I'm hearing it more and more now. And the reason why I like that particular concept is because at the end of the day, the product, the service that you offer is customer led. And what customers want is changing quickly. So unless you're partnering / collaborating, whatever word you want to use, it's very difficult to keep on top of these trends. So Ritukar, I would love to know more about how you view leadership. How do you define strong leadership personally, and how do you see it impacting the growth of autonomy?
So I think one thing which we learned way back in my professional career was employees are your first customers, right? So you once you start treating your employees as your first customers, and also at the same time, what we learned during the pandemic is customers are your partners. So eventually, if you look at the whole circle, leadership is bringing partnership with the customers and with the team which you're having to execute the bigger vision, right? So that became like one of the most important things that we should enable the team as much as possible. And it is the hierarchies are like pretty much flat, so that anybody can reach out, anyone anywhere, and the best idea wins. I mean, whether it is coming in from a intern, or it is coming from the CEO or CTO or whatnot, right? So cultivating that culture is very, very important. I think that's part of the responsibility for leadership. And once that gets ingrained in your DNA, then you start treating everybody as your partner. So just an example, most of our investors who pre-seed and seed rounds, which who led, so we worked with them in a very cohesive way, so that we can take the best out of them. And at any point in time, if there's something which we can help them out, so that also goes well. So I think partnering is one of the key aspect of running a company, because everybody around you needs that kind of warmth and partnership area around you. Basically, that's something which we realized. Second thing is we started using technology to create teams as well. So one of our early investors called Kinetic Ventures, they used a tool to analyze core traits of people who are joining you. So, and they evaluated us before putting their money in, and that all the co-founders are like what type of whether it's a dream team who's set to win, or all people of the same cultural or mental fit are coming together and starting something. So that means there's a whole thing, one area you're very, very strong, but the other areas are completely exposed. So we had a very balanced founding team. Everybody had something to offer on the table, and that made us like a very highly efficient team to start with. But then we wanted to cultivate that environment around us as we were growing. So we started with 4 or 5 people, but at this point in time we are around 55, 60 people. And we continue using that tool to identify what is the core trait of a person, and that becomes super important, because it has nothing to do with their core competence, but what mindset they are in, or what mind zone they are in, whether they are accelerators or they are architects who are specialists. So we map their archetype and then place them on appropriate roles. And that has shown tremendous results. And it takes me back to the movie Moneyball, where you use the technology to create the right teams instead of just the best players. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And it's really interesting that one of your early investors insisted on doing this before investing, because they're spot on. A winning team will achieve miracles. A team that is dysfunctional will constantly be at war with each other, and that takes away from the mission that you're trying to achieve. And I just also want to reiterate that point around competencies. Obviously, to do certain functions, you need skills. So you need the competency. If you're working as a developer, you need coding skills, etc. But that's not enough by itself. Now, having the right blend of skills, having the right blend of personality types is so important. And it's not about having a huge team of people that all think the same. You can think differently, you can have different personalities, but at the end of the day, you need a group of people that share the same value system, the same ethics, the same drive, the same interest in the mission. And so, having some kind of benchmark by which you can judge people before you recruit them is so valuable. And I'd be curious to know, actually, do you
Yeah.
have a very high retention rate?
So yeah, I think out of the entire 60 people grown so far, I think 2 or 3 people so far left for higher studies. Fortunately, we've been blessed that our retention is high. I mean, we retain people, and it's not about us. People want to stay because they like what they are doing.
Mm.
It's not like about what we all are trying to achieve. I think that's super exciting, and given the resources, given the time in which the team was able to execute, I think that's tremendous. And there's so much to do. So I mean, there has to be a good reason for anybody to look out for better option. And if they do, we do support them as well. So if somebody's going for higher education, so the first recommendations are from our side. So we try to engage with people more from not only goals which are associated with the organization, but also with their lives, like what they ultimately want to do in their lives. Yeah.
Mm. And I want to take that a step further, because it's really important to understand what are your employees' dreams. And I know that sounds a bit highfalutin and overarching, but if you understand what each individual wants to achieve in their life, at work, etc., you can find that sweet spot between them helping to drive the company mission forward and them feeling personally satisfied. And as you say, sometimes that looks like, hey, they're going to go off and do something else in higher education, and that's fine. But the problem comes when employees leave because dysfunctionality, toxicity, etc.
And
So
obviously, there's always more to learn. So yeah.
yeah, and this is actually going to be my next question about you personally. How have you invested in yourself as a leader, and what steps do you take to grow and evolve in your role?
So I think one of the most important aspect is that you should be passionate enough to do what you're trying to do, because I love the fact that Steve Jobs once said that if you don't love what you're doing, I mean, any sane person will identify more cons than pros of having a startup, right? So any sane person will give up and try to live a better life, better paying job and whatnot, work life balance, everything to put together. But it needs insanity, and it needs huge amount of passion to start a company and keep cultivating that among other people with the same amount of passion. So I think for me, my homework is one, keep invested in the what we are trying to do, be passionate. And if we are losing passion in something, we need to introspect that really, do we want to do this, or we want to change what we're doing. So that helps, that helps to steer the company, that helps to steer yourself. And above all, I mean, have some sort of rooting back to your family, because they are the ones who will keep you sane when you really go insane and running after your crazy big audacious goals. So I think a balance around that is really important. Whether if you're married, if it can be your wife, if you're not married, it can be your parents, but somebody in your family should help you to root, and that rooting is super important in your professional career to grow further. So that's how I keep myself sane, chasing an insanely audacious goal.
It's interesting because I mean, you've brought up the idea of purpose, passion, whatever word you want to use around that, but constantly reflecting on is this still driving me, is a really important exercise that I don't think everyone does regularly, because reviews are always helpful to make sure that you're staying on track. And the other point here is grounding. So rather than sort of being up in the clouds all the time, or getting to a point of just overstress where everything feels too much, it's good to have people, places, activities whatever it is that works for you, that keep you grounded. Because let's be honest, running a startup is really challenging.
Yeah, I mean, equally exciting, more exciting than challenging. I think that's the whole
Depending on
everything.
who you talk to. But yes, I mean, if you can find excitement in the challenge, I can definitely see that you view challenge in a way where you're like automatically translating it in your brain to opportunity, then so much the better, because it, you know, it makes your life so much easier, and it makes your life easier because you are less stressed by everything.
Yep, couldn't agree more.
Okay, final question. If you could go back in time and give one piece of advice to your 20-year-old self, what would that be?
I should have started way back earlier. So, I think, it took almost 16 years for me to take that plunge and start a company. Although, most of it was very rewarding and also great learnings. But if I can go back, then I think first 10 years was good enough for me to have enough learning to actually start something on my own, or with a set of people, with my wonderful co-founders, which I have right now. So I think the only thing which I'll change is, like, if I can go back in time and start a little early. So yeah.
I would say that better late than never, because, you know, remember that some people will defer what they want to do forever and will never do it. So I want to acknowledge you for being like, okay, well, I would have wanted to start sooner, but I did. I did start. Thank you so much for this conversation, Ritukar. I've really, really enjoyed it. And I hope you, my listeners, have enjoyed this conversation as well. If you would like to take part in the Leading in the Modern Way video interview series, please do reach out. Thank you and bye.
Thank you. Take care.